are the largest flood survivor network in the country. And I'm joined by Susan Liley from the Citizens Committee for Flood Relief in DeSoto, Missouri. Susan, you were one of the first people that I started to work with when we founded Higher Ground, and I'm so grateful to you for your leadership. You're now a Higher Ground Council member, which means you're part of the leadership group. Tremendously grateful to you for that. And I've followed you and your story and your activism with such delight. It's been such a pleasure working with you. Let's start. I want to, you are A, not a flood survivor, and B, you don't actually live within the city limits of DeSoto. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into this.
Well, the first time DeSoto flooded was during 2003. And I did not pay too much attention. I thought it was a fluke. Everybody thought it was a fluke. And a young father washed through the drainage tube right in the middle of town. And my nephew was looking for him. And a few weeks later, he was actually found in his small car under all of the debris. Well, I didn't do anything. I felt bad. I didn't do anything. So in 2013, it happened all over again, and there was another big flood. And I walked around and passed out eggs from my chickens like they had electricity or something. I still felt bad, but I didn't do much. In 2015, when they flooded for the fourth time, actually, and 2016, I walked into a friend of mine's home, and she had a full basement, and the water was lapping at the top of her floor. And I said, oh my gosh, I could not do this. I'm so angry. I'm just as angry as if it would have been me. I brought down her clothes and washed them. And I just was angry for her to see that time after time after time, nothing had been happening. Nothing had been done. And I think until then, our city must have thought it was a fluke, but it's not. We've been very fortunate since 2016. We have evacuated a couple times, which is a terrible experience for some people, but it's not damaged their homes.
So what did you do when you then thought, I have to do something about it? What did you do?
Got on Facebook, of course, and me and a couple ladies were complaining to each other. Ladies that one I had known as a kid, and another lady went to church with me, and we were just kind of saying, let's get a group together, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I think that some people had tried to do something in the earlier floods, but it didn't work out for them like it did with us, because we ran into a lady named Harriet Feasting, and she knew how to talk to people. She knew how to make them feel like they were her best friends, and she just is an amazing lady, and I work hard. I work hard for to get where we go.
So that's really kind of you to pass the credit on to me, but my word, you have met almost every month since that last flood, correct? I mean, incredible dedication of yourself and a group of other residents. Tell me how the city responded, and how did you kind of negotiate that? And
at first, the city didn't respond. They were more concerned about moving our downtown up to the highway. We've got an historical old downtown, and it was kind of being forgotten about, so we could build new. Well, to me, DeSoto is that historical old downtown. And after we had our USAC group, the Corps of Engineers came in, and now that downtown is in danger. The center of it, our historical theater, and both ends of it actually are in danger. So I don't know if that's why they didn't do anything. They knew ahead, but since then we've got a new city manager who's working very hard We've got a 2D study that's going along with the Corps of Engineers study. And we're fighting to save our town.
Right.
Because I've watched some other towns that they're gone. And we don't want to lose our main street.
Right. And so one of the breakthroughs that happened, and I've shared this story with many others, was when we linked you up with the Army Corps of Engineers technical assistance. So for people who are listening, this is the Army Corps of Engineers has a program called Silver Jackets, and they have a technical assistance program, and it's little known, and it offers free technical assistance to towns and cities impacted by flooding. And that was a kind of big breakthrough, wasn't it? Can you tell people a little bit about, what happened and why it seemed like a breakthrough? Or it didn't.
The United States Corps of Engineers, they came in and became like my family. I mean, these young men and women tried so hard. They came to our town. They went through our town. We took them and looked for 5-year-old watermarks with the U.S. Geological Survey. Everybody was here, and we were all working together. We actually came up with an alarm system that tells us we can actually sit and watch on our phones and watch how high the water goes. We can have it text us when the water is to a certain point, or I watch it all of the time when it's raining, because if we can get a little bit of rain just right, we can go underwater. Our last evacuation date was January the 20th. So the Corps of Engineers did us a great favor. They let other people realize, not just us, that there was a problem. I heard from the city manager this morning when I asked him what I should say, and he said they're getting ready to come back in for our next meeting. They're working on ways to reduce the flood around the town and warning systems. We already have little red flashing lights on our stoplights, and I said, could we get them to make a different kind of flash so people know, don't drive through floodwater. We've lost 3 lives. The gentleman I told you, we lost a lady that was evacuated by boat. She had been homebound, and we lost a lady that her car washed just on down the creek. So we've got some bad history, but we're working on it.
So one of the things, having come from Chicago, which is a city that's largely flat, I think it required me to come and visit you to better understand what flash flooding is. So the residents are being flooded by Yoakum Creek, which flash floods. Could you just explain what that looks like?
Again, because I was called down one morning from church, it was actually flashing, and I have never seen anything like that. You never will probably, but it's an act of God, I guess, because when you get a certain amount of rain, this rain all congregates in the middle of the tiny Joachim Creek, which is 2 foot at the highest most of the time. But it's a solid wave of water that it stays in the banks when it's splashing, but it goes straight down the creek and takes everything with it. And then it's gone. The creek might stay high for a few minutes or a few days, but then it's gone. It's not there anymore. It doesn't linger like a flood, like of the river, where it's there for days and days and days and weeks. But you also don't have the warning like you have for a river, because you've got minutes to get out of the way.
Right.
And it's gone.
When I visited you, and one of your neighbors showed me, actually your co-founder, showed me a shed where there had been animals, I think horses, and she had explained that those horses all drowned, really just because the owners didn't even have the minutes it would take to open the doors.
Yes, there's not that time. It's fast. Just recently, we had a flood, or we had a rain, And in DeSoto, it was 1.5 inches worth of rain. 3 miles on the other side of DeSoto, just 3 miles on the other side of DeSoto, we had 5 inches of rain. Well, if that 5 inches had hit on the DeSoto side, we would have been in trouble. But it was on the unpopulated side. So it's just that close. It can come just that quick.
Right. So the Army Corps of Engineers Civil Jackets program, they were so helpful because they both developed a plan of action and brought together all the federal agencies, the county, the city. That seemed to me so significant from a city that was before kind of ignoring that there was a problem. I think it'd be fair to say, and I know you have to be careful what you say, that you have been frustrated since the action hasn't occurred at the speed and scale that you would like. Tell me a little bit about kind of where things have gone, where the frustrations have been.
Well, we finished our Corps of Engineers study. We had a big meeting at the high school, and I really wanted to get some of the high school students in, so I was frustrated about part of that because our football field is right there. And if these kids could watch on their floodgate, on their telephones, what the flood gauge was doing, they would be safer. And I still intend on doing and getting in there somehow to teach them that. But the Corps of Engineers, we had a big meeting October the 1st of 2019, and that was where they ended what they thought should happen. We didn't come up with any funding like I thought. They gave us lists of people who to call for funding. And I even went with Pew Research in February to Washington, D.C. to talk to our congressman for a flood bill to keep the repetitive loss homes from being resold. But I also went to him to say, hey, how come nothing happened? You know, how come we haven't gotten anywhere? Well, we hadn't applied. In all those years, we had not applied. But now the notice of intent has been issued. So I'm not sure where it will go from there. People are aware. Our Thriving Earth scientists are aware, and they reminded me last night, Susan, you've got to get signs up or something where people don't become complacent. You've got to get notifications up to show people this still can happen and will happen. So
Right. So tell me, because you just mentioned then the Thriving Earth Exchange, and people won't know what that means. Tell me a little bit more, tell our listeners a little bit more about the Thriving Earth Exchange and how it worked for you.
Thriving Earth Exchange is a group of scientists all over the United States and I guess the world. And a lot of them volunteer their time. We had 4 Thriving Earth Exchange scientists that volunteered their time. They come from all over the Missouri to come. They're often, well, they all are professors at St. Louis University, Dr. Dan Haynes, St. Louis University, Dr. Amanda Cox, and from USGS, Dr. Rob Jacobson. And they too have became like my family because I can say, hey, give me an idea. What should I do? Or can you help? Can you talk? You know, they're amazing because we would have not gotten anywhere without our Thriving Earth Exchange scientists.
And so it seemed to me that the sort of beauty of the process was that you had the Silver Jackets, Army Corps, sort of government folks doing the study. And then how did that work with the scientists? What was their role?
Their role was just to watch and advise. They tried not to step on toes, but just advice as to how to help. Like the one saying, Susan, you need to get some warnings up, you know, because we're becoming complacent. So they've always got something. They've told me about grants and they've helped and they've came to our meetings and talked and it's
Right.
I just don't know why I was chosen to do this, but I try hard.
You bet you try. Tremendously successful. You are a case study that we share with many people in terms of your progress and your dynamism. You're incredible. Um, so you also mentioned buyouts and you mentioned a letter of intent. Again, people won't know what that means. So say a little bit about your understanding of buyouts, where you've got your frustrations, etc.
The notice of intent probably should have been filled out several years back.
And tell people what a
And
notice of
wasn't.
intent is.
Notice of intent is intent to apply for FEMA funding.
Right.
And there really hadn't been that much money to apply for FEMA funding. But then I started hearing, hey, there's FEMA funding now. So when I got back from Washington, D.C., I was a little angry that we hadn't put in the notice of intent. And our sweet city manager got right on it and fixed it. So the notice of intent is there. If we ever get any money for buyouts, it would be the people's decision. It would be, nobody is going to be forced out of their home. It is the people's decision to take the buyout. Many of these people are tired. They've been through it one too many times, and once is just enough. If you've ever had even your bathroom overflow and go through it, you don't want to have to redo your whole home over and over and over. And the third time, FEMA won't let you do your own home over. It's a loss, and you're forced to tear that home down. We have a friend that happened to in Sunset Hills, was made to tear her own home down. Right. We don't want to go that far.
Right. And I suppose this point is important to say, because it's what I've discovered in so many other communities, is that you discovered really that there were programs out there that your city had not applied for.
Yes.
And that's, partly because city managers are trying to do 6 million other things, and partly because they're trying to ignore the fact that it's a problem, maybe because they're trying to do 6 million other things. And from what I can see, it's your persistence. If you had not been around continually, pushing them, other things would have taken.
Well, our first city manager, we changed. They fired him, and we moved on to another one who's young and bright. And I've met him in Jefferson City several different times. When I was up there fighting for flooding, he would walk in, and he cares. It's just he's got so much going on.
Right.
So
right.
He will work. We got the American Planning Grant, which I was really thrilled to see come through, and he's going to work right along beside of us with that.
Right. So let's talk a little bit more about that grant. It's not actually a grant, it's a technical assistance that you'll be getting from the American Planning Association. Tell people a little bit more about that.
It's American Planning Association, and they're out of Chicago, Illinois. And there are 4 groups that got it. 3 of them were higher ground groups, and one of them was in Puerto Rico. So yay! I can't wait to work with Ryan, and I didn't dream that I would get this. It was mostly through you doing all the hard work, and then the final phone call and Zoom call with him, I guess, convinced him. We've got several people that have volunteered, including an environmental lawyer. We've got a planning and a building lady. We've got a horticulturist, and all of our group, of course, the city manager. We've got all kinds of people ready to do what they think will help make DeSoto have a better green infrastructure and be more flood resilient.
Right. And that grant is specifically, as you were saying, about looking for nature-based solutions, so not the pipes and the levees, but how you can use nature to better manage
Yes.
flooding in a city.
Yes.
So, you worked with Higher Ground. Tell me a little bit more about what you found helpful, what your hopes are for the future for an organization, how you found it useful or not as a network, the Higher Ground network.
Higher Ground has been amazing because we have seen people, what one of our scientists calls our sister city is Ellicott City, Maryland. And I have kind of attached myself to them. And I've watched what they've gone through. They're built up on a hill like our town is, with a downtown Main Street, a low-lying Main Street. And I watched them fight, trying to get through to people that you just can't keep building up and not expect more water down, because water runs down. I've watched some of their videos where their main people are inside the stores and the glass breaks in the windows and the cars flow down the road, and I don't want to go there. They've had a horror. One of the biggest ladies that has fought for it is overseas now, fighting for our country, but she's still right there watching all of the time. So I don't want to be where they're at now, going through it another time.
Right.
So just listening to people's stories, like in South Carolina this last week, the flooding that they've had, and the friends that I've made, and it's just been invaluable. I mean, it's just made this old empty nester have something to do, something to help, trying to help.
Right.
Many of the Higher Ground people and the council are my friends, and if they've got something that they're upset with, we can talk back and forth. And
yes.
It's a family.
Yes, which actually brings me on to a point about the emotional toll of flooding. Tell people a little bit, most people would not really, if you haven't lived through it, you don't know what that's like. Can you explain what you've learned? Because I know you're, on Facebook messaging many people who are going through the experiences that you've heard of in DeSoto.
They are. It's sad because one little neighborhood that's by our Joachim Creek, I became friends with all of the people there that flooded, and I watched within, I guess, maybe a month, a couple summers ago, one after the other dying. They were in their 60s, 70s. One died of COPD. One died of a massive brain hemorrhage. One died of her heart exploding. And they were just within a few houses of each other. And that the flooding had to have something to do with it. Their last days, their last years were spent fighting for things that they have built up all those years, and then they're lost. No. They're lost due to flooding. They fix it up, then they're sick. And sometimes I feel like that maybe that's what the cities are waiting for, is for the people to die and then they can get the home or whatever. But we've got to work hard. We've got to work hard on rebuying flood homes. We've got to stop that practice. When it's flooded, it needs to be bought out. Yeah. And it doesn't need to have another family come in and go through the same pain that other family has been through already. Repetitive loss homes should never be sold. I watch, and people will contact me at least once a week and say, hey, how about this home? And I'll say, well, maybe water didn't get in it, but the car washed away, or a huge 60-yard dumpster went down the creek there. But people feel like that these homes are so cheap and it's not going to happen again. It is going to happen again. So we've got to stop the repetitive loss flooding. And a lot of the people these days think that fill and build is the solution. If you fill it up and make it higher, you're not going to flood. That doesn't work out either. Somebody else is going to flood because you build a complex. These people in town, their homes are at least 60 to 100 years old. They didn't build in a floodplain. The floodplain built around them, and it's doubled now.
Right,
So,
right. Which brings me to something else that I remember you telling me about, which is just another one of these, such big frustrations and such illogical things that cities do, or in this case, the county. You told me that the Army Corps of Engineers had identified an area where it could be, I think, converted into wetlands or some kind of green infrastructure that could retain
yes.
stormwater. And what happened? The new development has gone on it. Have I got that
Yes.
correct?
There was a perfect place that I can see out the highway that would make a perfect wetland. It would mean removing just a couple houses and then the water could flow into that spot. But as we were driving out there one day, there was a brand new house built. We immediately jumped on the phone to the county and said, how can you let this house be built when you know these houses all flood? Well, apparently he'd had a basement there for years, and so they went ahead and let that happen. But it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense.
No. So, this is really my last question. I'm hoping that other would-be flood survivor advocates are listening to this. What word of wisdom would you give them?
You may not always look good on camera.
Beautiful.
You may make a fool of yourself and ramble on, but you know what? If you don't try, nobody else is going to. So get out there and help people. Work hard. Some people will say, oh, you're just looking for a name for yourself. Why would I need a name for myself? I'm not running for anything. I'm just trying to help people. If you don't help them, nobody's going to help them. A lot of times they don't know how to help themselves. So when you feel the power of being moved, move.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. It's lovely to speak to you. I really
Oh,
appreciate
Harriet, I
your
love you.
time. Love you
Take
too.
care.
And you. Bye.